Welcome back to Clicks and Bricks. Today, I'm excited to be interviewing Aurora Winter. I think we have a lot of stuff to talk about. Being a fellow author, I'm excited. I think we're going to uncover a lot of tips and tricks for anybody that wants to be an author out there. Aurora, how are you doing today?
I'm awesome, Ken. It's great to be on the show with you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Before we jump into the question and answer section, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what possessed you to become an author?
I'm obsessed with words. I've been obsessed with writing since I was 9 years old. I'm a film and television producer. I launched a company with a partner in London, England. We raised $5 million, made 8 films. And then I went, wait a minute, you have to have so much money to pull off a movie. And I returned to my love of books. But throughout my life, I've launched several businesses from scratch, some of which made 7 figures. And I realized, even though I was in completely different industries, that the common thread was always words. It was solving problems at a profit. But until I was able to articulate what the problem was, the business floundered. And when I nailed the message, the revenue came in. So I hope to deliver some of that value to your audience today so they can do the same and turn their words into wealth.
Absolutely. I love it. Getting the right messaging is so,
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur, and most of our audience is entrepreneurs, and we're living in a time to where being an entrepreneur and an author together are becoming more and more available
Yeah.
to everybody. And use a lot of, almost sounds like I'm talking to a marketing expert when I'm talking to you, not necessarily an author. How much do those two worlds intertwine? Author, marketer. Is it the same
Well,
job or is it wildly different?
to me, it's similar because I'm not the kind of author who writes poetry. I'm the kind of author who writes nonfiction and fiction books, but with an intention to make a difference and change the world. If you want to change how somebody thinks or feels about something, in a way, you're marketing. So, my background in film and television of a movie is actually an idea wrapped in an emotion. And then if you think about it, the best books are also an idea wrapped in an emotion. And the best marketing is an idea wrapped in an emotion. Therefore, to me, these things are all similar because if you just have an idea that won't land with other people, it'll be very dry. It could be cerebral, it might be interesting, but it doesn't really stick. But if you have a story, you can wrap your idea in an emotion and then it sticks and it can even go viral. So my whole message is your words are power. Let's make them profitable. But just to drive home the distinction between an idea and an idea wrapped in an emotion, which is a story, most people can't remember the 10 commandments. But most people can remember more than 10 stories from the Bible if they've ever gone to church, even if that was decades ago. And so I rest my case.
Okay. I love it. That's fairly profound, right? You can remember 10 stories. I think if you sat splitting the seas, wine to water, burning bush, like you come up with those pretty quick, but listing the 10 commandments would be more challenging.
Yeah.
So stories resonate with humans longer or better.
I think stories are the DNA of humanity. Stories are how we pass wisdom on from generation to generation. Even super long stories like Ulysses, people memorized them and sang them around the campfire. And they passed on messages of things to watch out for or things to lean into. They passed on values of being heroic and also watch out for the witch. So we have passed through the information age. I think for a while there, we were all in love with information. But now I think most people know there's a glut of information. We don't actually need more information, but we're still hungry for transformation. And we're hungry for guidance on what is the meaning of life and how can we lead a fulfilling life and what do I do next? We're hungry for that kind of thing. And stories, whether they're movies, whether they're books, whether they're podcasts, can change you in that moment and can make a difference for that moment, for that day, maybe even change the trajectory of your life.
That's beautiful. And, I'm a technologist at heart, and I think we've diagnosed life down to DNA and binary code to ones and zeros. And we understand that in a way that documented humanity has never understood like we do today. And it's time, we're done being obsessed with ones and zeros. Let's start living life and enjoying it and experiencing these things in a way that hasn't been available to humanity that we ever know of. We live in a world that intelligence is democratized and you can have all these wonderful geniuses in your pocket today. So it's
You can have intelligence, but not wisdom. So I think the best stories attempt to impart wisdom, or at least ask powerful questions that can impart wisdom.
yeah, I think that we have been in the digital art renaissance for the last 3 years, and I don't know where it's going to end, but I think storytelling is going to see an arc that humanity hasn't really seen in a very long time, akin to the cave drawings. I hope, right? NFTs will be the cave drawings in 100,000 in 1,000 years from now.
I hope so. Like, I'm really excited about technology. A little scared, but mostly excited. So, for example, I have a new YouTube channel called Strategic Basics, and it's amazing what we can do. I have a background in film and TV, as I mentioned. So, instead of just being a talking head, it's half B roll. And my son is my CTO, and he's also a video game designer. So, dealing with Mid Journey and Runway, it's like, it's his kind of language, right?
Yeah,
And I think people don't even fully realize how much more important your stories are going to become in the age of AI, and how much explosion of creativity is available with these tools. I'm really leaning into the possibility that AI will unleash human creativity rather than supplant it. Because I think you do need the creative spark, that sense of humor, that insight, that little something, something special going on. And then you can leverage the tools to, I mean, if we tried to do what we're doing every week on Strategic Basics, it would have taken a week. It would have been cost prohibitive before. And
right.
now, it still takes 8 hours, but
I
it's
can talk
doable.
profoundly on the negatives of what's happening right now in the world at a global economic and potentials for world war at great depth for days probably. But what you're talking about on the other side of it excites the heck out of me so much that you said you've been writing since 9. I started writing when I was 7, but I hated it. I started doing it as therapy. I was a violent young boy, and my therapist, had me start writing to get my emotions out. But I'm dyslexic and I can't spell very well and I can't read it. Technology has given me the confidence to publish that. And what I love about AI is understanding how people learn and understand other things, to have a single piece, being able to publish it in multiple modalities so
Yeah.
fast and easy. I think we're going to be able to transfer data in a way that hasn't been able to transfer other than verbally before in,
Yeah.
in a lot of case scenarios. And that's exciting.
It is exciting. It's interesting you mentioned that you're dyslexic. About half of my clients are dyslexic. So I love dealing with dyslexic people because I think they tend to look at the world from a bit of a fresh perspective. They have something to offer. But how I help people write books is by interviewing them. So it's
Yeah,
obviously very easy for somebody who's dyslexic. They don't have to write a word. They just
absolutely.
talk
I
it out.
talk my books.
Yeah.
I talk them, and that's how I write now, and I love it. And the technology is finally there at a really really high space. So I'm excited about a lot of things. I'm scared about a lot too, but
So you
I
like
hope
talking
that
books out. You're finding that's really working for you.
yeah. And I think that there's more good in the world than bad, and I think that love will always conquer evil. And I have those minimalistic faiths in my life, and that's how I smile and keep going. Aurora, you've made several big pivots in your career: TV exec, entrepreneur, and now author. What was the hardest one, and what helped you move forward when it felt risky?
Good question. I think the hardest pivot was after my husband died. So my husband died when he was 33 and I was 31 and our son was 4. And we had a very successful business selling boats, selling yachts as tax shelter investments. We were just 2 kids, didn't have anything, and we grew this big business and grew to a multi-million-dollar business. And then we were building our dream home on the lake and then he died. I'm like, what? This is so not something that I ever thought could happen. I felt like I'd been run over by a truck on the 405, and then the truck backed up and ran over me again. And I was like, wow. I felt really hopeless. And in that dark moment of despair, an author changed my life. And curiously, it was the same author that gave me the love of writing when I was 9 years old. And I thought, that is a very weird, miraculous coincidence. The author is C.S. Lewis. And when I was 9, I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I decided I would do whatever it took to become a great writer like C.S. Lewis, because I couldn't think of anything more amazing than to be able to transport somebody to another place and time that doesn't even exist, just with ink on white paper. I'm like, writers are wizards. And then at age 31, I read his Diary of Healing, which is called A Grief Observed. It later became the movie Shadowlands with Deborah Winger and Anthony Hopkins. And so twice in my life, C.S. Lewis changed my life, once with a nonfiction book and once with fiction. A Grief Observed helped me a lot because I realized I did not have to shoot myself down and get this over with. And that grief was mad midnight moments, and that it was kind of normal to have weird experiences when you're in the depths of grief. And so that book really helped me normalize grief. And if he could get through it, I could too. And so I looked down at my little 4-year-old son's trusting eyes and I realized I had to get my act together. So I went off. Actually, there's a story there too, but the short part of it is I went off to become an executive in film and television and turn my love of words into a career. So I became head of development for Canada's largest film and television production company in Toronto.
Wonderful. And there's probably a whole episode of being a woman in that time frame in a male dominated world.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And a widow and a single mom.
Yeah.
I did have moments of despair slash envy, because I realized the other executive producers were typically men and they had a wife at home taking care of everything. Whereas I was, trying to
You
do it
both.
all, work the 80-hour weeks, still be a good mom. And yeah, it was difficult, which is why I started my own film and television production company, which of course was more difficult. But at least I had agency and we made a bunch of films.
Yeah. I left the entertainment industry in 1999 to go into IT. And
That was
um,
smart.
I vowed I would go back into entertainment when I could do it on my terms and not an executive's terms, an executive producer's terms. And that's where I'm headed now in my career.
What did you like best about the entertainment industry, and what part of it would you want to lean into again?
Well, I will let you interview me for a second. I love the community. When you work on a set, you become a family so quickly and you depend on each other. And, they're long days. They're 16, 18, 20-hour days sometimes 72-hour runs to
Yeah,
get the job done. Because, well, film was more expensive back then, or it was film when I was doing it too. Like, the setup, everything had to be on point because it was really expensive to do a second and, fourth take. But I love that community that was, everybody was on the same page. It was the entire hive was moving in the same direction at the same time. And when you have that, it's intoxicating.
yeah.
And I don't have a better way to say it. It's just amazing feeling to be part of that. And then the creation piece of something that didn't exist and now
Yeah.
it does because of your efforts is, I think,
The
profound as well.
creativity plus the connection and the community. It's amazing.
It's hard to replace without drugs and alcohol.
Which is another story.
I've got a whole book about that as well.
Oh,
Aurora, when you decided to write Turn Words into Wealth, what problem were you trying to solve for yourself and other thought leaders?
yeah. Well, I've written a number of books and 30 screenplays, one of which was produced. So right now I've got 10 published books. But when I wrote Turn Words into Wealth, the problem I was trying to solve, and think I have solved in the book, was to reach out to people who want to be an author or even who are an author. But most first time authors spend 3.5 years writing a book, but then they drop the ball right at the finish line. And I just saw such a tragedy in that, and I wanted to stop it. So one of the mistakes people make is, there's so many mistakes, but one of them is they don't test the title. They don't test the subtitle. They don't nail the category that the book belongs in. They don't think about marketing the book so that the book is marketed before it is published. They don't apply for awards. But the most tragic mistake that is commonly made is they don't think of the book as the first step in a banquet. They don't think of it as an appetizer that is the first step in building a relationship with their reader. And no, without withholding anything in a book, some people will still want more. And if you don't let them know in your book what that more is, you've probably left 7 figures on the table. So it's a real tragedy. And I wanted to bust the myth that the most money people make from books is by selling books. That's wrong. 85% of the money that even best-selling authors make from their books is not by selling their books. Even if they're making millions from selling their books, they're making a lot more by speaking, by consulting, by training, by attracting premium clients at premium prices, and on and on. So I wanted to let people know, hey, there's 7 different models for making 7 figures from your book. Choose one of these 7 models. Model number 8 is making money from your book. And make sure that you let people who read your book know, are you available as a speaker? Do you have another training? Are you a coach? What is it? What is the next step? Because there's always another problem after the first problem. And I made this mistake. My first published book, it's called From Heartbreak to Happiness. And I really thought, okay, people read that book, they will get over grief and they'll be good. I didn't withhold anything in my book, but people naturally wanted more. And so I'm like, oh, note to self, I should have put that in the book. So Turn Words into Wealth shares how I've made 7 figures from my books, how my clients have made 7 figures from their books, and how famous people that you would know make 7 figures from their books. So choose one of these models and
And
use
there's
it.
7 different models to do it with.
7 different models, which I go into detail in the book, Turn Words into Wealth.
Awesome. I'll have to read that, and I'll tell you one of my models and see if it's one of the 7.
All right.
I think it might be. I want to talk about something for just a second that's not on my questions. I don't wear a public title of artist, but I've always looked at myself as an artist, as a person that creates stuff. And
Yeah.
even though I've spent the last 25 years in technology, a lot of that is art and the creation and laying out the designs and all of those things. I'm a bit of a stubborn artist and I create things the way that I want to create them. But you said testing my titles. Where do you how does a person draw the line between what they're creating for themselves to put out, and if people enjoy it, then they enjoy it. So because we're looking for people that align with us, and a lot of times when we're creating our art, versus get it to sell it. And how do I do that without feeling like a sellout?
Well, don't test your title if you don't want to know the answer. But here's 2 examples. The author still can take the information from the survey and go, I disagree. You're not giving over agency or control. I've tested titles multiple different ways, and I'll tell you 2 quick stories. My first published book, I got a download. I thought it was a divine download, and initially I called it Struggling and Soaring with Angels. So actually, my first published book was my Diary of Healing, and it's called Struggling and Soaring with Angels. But every time I went on radio or TV, I had to explain I wasn't Doreen Virtue, wasn't actually about angels, but it was metaphor, that my husband was dead. And that's what I was trying to tell. And if you're only on TV for 5 minutes and you have to explain your title, this is a problem. Yeah. So I decided to test the title. And I came up with a list of maybe 14 titles that I liked. And then I went someplace that I thought, oh, these people would be my ideal reader. So I went to Marianne Williamson, was speaking at Agape Church in Los Angeles. And as people exited the church after hearing her speak, I'm like, which of these titles do you like, this one or this one? I just gave them 2 options on 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and they would vote. And I tallied it. And if a 17-year-old boy gave me a vote, I would write it somewhere else and not add it because he wasn't my ideal reader. And what I discovered is that one of my favorite titles, which I think was Courage, Braveheart or something, had people thinking about the movie Braveheart. Oh, that didn't even occur to me. And something else was some kind of a sports slogan. I didn't know that. And like, well, I don't really want that. So the title of that book became From Heartbreak to Happiness, an intimate diary of healing is the subtitle. So it's very clear. I don't have to explain. It's from heartbreak to happiness. It's the transformation from one to the other.
Clear over creative is a big tip there.
Right.
Huge tip, right? If you got people scratching their head on the title, you probably lost the game.
Yeah, don't be too creative. Exactly right. So that title outpulled the other titles 2-1. It wasn't even close. Nowadays, I test titles on online platforms so I can get an answer for my clients usually within an hour, but certainly within a day. We'll have like 50 respondents, and they'll say, oh, I like this title for these reasons, or I didn't like this title for these and so reasons. And you can quickly see, oh, it's pretty close. So which title do you like, author? Or like, this is not close at all. Maybe we want to go with the title that people get.
Yeah, I know the technology's there right now for buttons, right? I can take a button on a website and change the colors and the winner wins. Whichever one gets clicked more ends up being the static, and it's an A/B split test on web development. I assume that the technology for print on demand books is going to be there pretty soon as well. So it might be a case the next couple of years where you just put your content out there and the system tests the different titles for you, and whatever one sells better.
Well, you can use, there's a company, I'm not affiliated with them or anything. They're called PickFu, Pick and then FU.com. And you can, for $50 or $100, test a title. You can also test your Amazon landing page. You can test a brochure. I think the Amazon algorithm is in a kind of way testing the contents of books. I don't
Yeah.
know. But yeah,
I know that the
we want
reviews are
to
huge.
we want to keep agency and creativity. But why not
Yes.
make an informed decision?
Yeah. Sometimes agency and creativity outpower the financial decision.
Yeah, and that's fine.
It depends on why you're doing it, right?
Depends on why you're doing it. I personally like to know when people misunderstand a title in ways that I hadn't thought of. That's helpful information.
It is very, very helpful information.
But the whole marketing, yeah, the oftentimes people who are great authors or artists aren't really into the marketing, and that's this whole process. So one thing I've noticed, there's so many different ways of marketing books, and you don't have to do all of them, but pick a couple that you like. Like I like being on podcasts, so that works for me. And there's so many interesting ways to market. One of the things I really like is to apply for awards and get all the reviews lined up before the book comes out, because you have this honeymoon period on Amazon that's maybe 60 days, maybe 30 days. You got to get your ducks in a row before the book is published and not go, oh, maybe I should think about marketing it like 2 weeks after it comes out. So, one of the ways I love to help people is to get the marketing lined up in advance.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I've published books that I didn't do a hype for and I did a hype for beforehand. And the difference is profound. And asking for the reviews and having the reviews. And just if you go in hot and you can get best new release in your categories, that's a whole nother marketing campaign that you can get. And
Exactly.
I think people don't understand that if they really do full court press on their release, that's achievable, even for an independent author, right?
It is totally achievable. In fact, 100% of my clients have gotten, category win, like a number one new release on Amazon in their category, a number one in
Yes.
their category. It's totally achievable with a bit of thought and relatively modest budget. Now with another client, I'm attempting to get a New York Times bestseller, which is a whole other kettle of fish, but we'll see if that happens. But yeah,
I'm gonna
the
shoot.
more marketing, you need more time. Pardon me?
Yes. I'm gonna shoot for a couple of those myself.
All right. Very good.
We'll see what happens. We're gonna give it the best swing we can. How does the spoken author method change the writing process versus traditional methods? And what's one surprising benefit people don't expect?
I love the spoken author method. So I came up with that in 2020, actually, to meet the problem of one of my clients who is dyslexic. I'm like, never mind writing your book. What if we just talk it out? And so, how we create books is first we make an outline, say, who is this book for? What is the problem that you're solving? Break it into chapters. And then I interview the person, say there's 10 chapters, and there'd be like 10 1 hour podcast like interviews. So, a couple of surprising things come out of this. One, most first time authors cannot write 500 words in a day, but you can talk 5,000 or even 8,000 words in an hour. So, the quantity is so much higher and it's so much easier and it's fun. The other thing that most people don't do or don't realize is because we're capturing the audio and the video as we're creating the rough first draft, we then have the potential of hundreds of pieces of social media content that can be repurposed before the book comes out to build buzz, to build momentum. The other thing that people don't realize is the value of talking it through. They get much more clear on what do they really think. It's much more challenging is maybe the wrong flavor because it's fun, but it's much more insightful. And so when your book comes out, you ideally need to go on podcasts, radio, TV, on the speaking circuit. You need to be not just a good author, but a good speaker if you actually want the book to live up to its full potential. So the way that we create the book makes them media trained. So that's another benefit. And then I think the most surprising benefit that most people don't expect, I'm giving more than one benefit, but I get excited. They don't really fully understand the cathartic or healing value of somebody asking who really cares, asking questions that encourages them, invites them to review their life, review their business, review all their mistakes, and basically pull up that muddy piece of history and go, yeah, that was painful at the time, but rinse it off. There actually was some gold and diamonds of wisdom that came out of that experience. And so it's very cathartic or healing. It's like, I don't know, kind of therapeutic. And I think most people don't expect that added value of creating a book the spoken author method.
I moved from physically writing to verbally speaking nightly, I would say probably 20 years ago, and just recording those, like those nightly kind of brain dumps is what I call them. Before I'd handwrite them, but the tech got enough where I had a recorder 20 years ago. And it is the most therapeutic thing that I've ever done in my life is just take that time every day to just unload my day.
Yeah.
And doing it verbally over handwriting, I get a lot more than nuance out.
Yeah.
And I also think that whenever I'm talking it out and I'm doing it in an interview style, I'll say things kind of off the cuff that I would never write down probably because I would stop myself like, oh no, we're not going to talk about that in this. But I'm talking to somebody, I say it. And I think after you rewrite that, very frequently I go, did I actually, like, I'll dump it into AI. I'm like, did I coin that phrase or did you come up with it? And it will say, no, you came up with this in your rant. So
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful way to write, especially that first draft.
It makes me think about it. It says in the Bible, wherever two or more are gathered, like there's something magical that happens with two people are connecting and talking that doesn't happen by yourself.
No, it does not. The connection there is it's human at the end of the
Yeah.
day, right? It's the most human thing that we do is just connect and
Yeah.
be together and perceive the universe together and instead of individually. You've been through deep personal loss. We've talked about your early loss of your husband. How has grief shaped your work, your voice, your goals, and your sense of purpose?
Well, I've written a few books about grief, including Grief Relief in 30 Minutes, which talks people through a cognitive behavioral therapy process. She's got 5 questions. And I often use those 5 questions just whenever I'm stressed, and I find them helpful. I don't think stress ever goes away. Maybe it's not overwhelming grief, but life is difficult. Life has problems. How grief has changed me is I was a very academic type driven personality, and I'm still academic A type driven personality, but softened by the realization is not even a strong enough word, but that life is short. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. And I don't want to have regrets on my deathbed about not telling the people that I love them. I want to do my best to live up to my God given talents and make a difference with this wonderful life and this potential that I've been given. My mission at Same Page Publishing is to create books that make a difference and have a positive impact on the world. And so I feel called toward greatness sounds arrogant. I feel called toward making a difference, doing something that matters. Because really, at the end of the day, paying the mortgage and having X dollars in your 401k is kind of meaningless compared to living up to your potential or living up to my potential or helping somebody else live up to theirs and make the difference that they can. Like sometimes the difference between somebody making a difference to 100 people and making a difference to 100,000 people is just one mentor who helps them write a book.
Yes. I talk with one of my favorite jobs I have is my wife and I started a boxing school several years ago. And I talk with our head coach quite a bit. And I tell him, we don't do this for the money for sure.
Yeah.
Nobody's a boxing coach because it pays well. But you think about the legacy that you live, and conversations will be had about the lessons you provided in 100 years from now at dinner tables.
Yeah.
And that is legacy in a way that was hard for an average person to get throughout humanity. But now, with the way things are positioned, your voice can be heard, your story can be told, and it doesn't really matter what hurdles you have to overcome. Everything is there for you to do that today in a way that is more profound than any other time that I can
Well,
recall.
and if you do the karma math on it, like if somebody reads your book about sobriety and they become sober, like you've given somebody back their life. Even if that book only changed one person's life, it would be worth it. And I'm sure it's changed many people's lives, but even if
Yes.
it was only one, it would totally be worth it. I mean, look at my own life twice, and I'm only from the stories I've told you today. One author changed my life after he was dead. C.S. Lewis, when I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. C.S. Lewis, again, when I read his book, A Grief Observed. Those books were like seeds that germinated when I opened them at the age 9, and I opened another one at the age 31. And each book changed my life, changed the trajectory of my whole life. So just
Absolutely.
imagine what what your books are doing, Ken, or what other people's books can do if they take the time to put their hard-earned wisdom into something that somebody else can
Yes.
read, you know, a
And
hundred years from now.
today, and like just so that people understand the technology today versus 6 months ago, it would have cost, just to do the audio version of your book, would have cost a lot of money 2 years ago. And today it's a click of a button and it's decent work, right?
Yeah,
I think you'll have better luck if you record it yourself and do go through that whole process. But on day one, you can launch affordably with an audio and a text version of your book today,
yeah,
which I think
exactly.
is just the coolest thing on the whole planet. Because if they had audiobooks when I was a kid, I would be 1,000 times more dangerous than I am today. Aurora, what's the biggest myth that first time authors believe that end up holding them back?
Mhm.
And how do you help them overcome those myths?
I think the biggest myth that holds them back is I'm not good enough. The imposter syndrome, the who wants to hear my message, who wants to hear my story, that really keeps people stuck. And how I help people break through that is by just letting them know that's part of the human condition. Don't try to get over it. It's pre-installed software. And when we have the spotlight on ourselves, like it's all about me, I've got to be good enough, I've got to be wise enough, I've got to be brilliant enough, that's going to collapse your energy. But if you put the spotlight on one reader or one listener to the podcast and you're like, what if I could say something that could help that person today? Your whole energy will shift. And instead of being like, I'm not articulate enough, I'm not wise enough, I'm not Bill Gates, what have I got to share? You just go human to human. If I could help that person, it's worthwhile. And I think anyone who's lived for a while anyone who's lived for a while and has an impulse that they would like to write a book probably has some hard earned wisdom that would help other people. If you put it into a nice format that others could digest, it could make a difference. So get over yourself and do it.
Yeah, it's profound. And you don't do it. I think if you're doing it for the money and the outcome, it's the wrong reason to do it. It can be profitable. I love what you said earlier. The book is not where you're going to find the profit from. You're going to find it in your speaking, your engagement, your relationships, and
Yeah,
all those other things. You might find it in the book sales too. But that is hard. It is its own business. Writing the book is one business. Selling the book is another business.
exactly.
And I don't think most people realize that. They think, "Oh, I'll write this book and put it on Amazon, and it will just start selling." You'll
The
sell a
whole
couple copies,
Yeah. The
but
whole if they build it, they will come philosophy ruins ruins a lot of marketing. You need to get the
yes,
message out there, no matter what it is that you're selling.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I agree. Podcast tour is my favorite way, and then swapping reviews is my second favorite. But you work in both fiction, young adult fiction, and nonfiction. How do you decide what message or story belongs in which format, and what are the different challenges?
Mm. Yeah, I wrote so much drama when I was in film and television. Like I've written 30 screenplays and they were all dramatic. And one of them was made and it was a young adult fantasy drama that still sometimes airs on Halloween. It's pretty obvious if you're solving a specific problem and you have a recipe or a method or some wisdom, or you want to be a speaker or you have a training, it's going to be most likely a nonfiction book. But if you have an idea wrapped in emotion, maybe that will be fiction. So I've helped a number of authors write fiction, and I usually look through a lens of can we create the ideal reading experience, but that also could be turned into a movie or a TV series because that's where the real money comes from fiction. Though fiction outsells nonfiction, generally speaking, even if you're not famous. My fantasy series is called Magic, Mystery, and the Multiverse. Here's one of the books in the series. It's a trilogy. The Secret Multiverse Academy is book two. Book three just came out, Multiverse Mayhem, and book one is not within reach, but it's called Magic, Mystery, and the Multiverse. And it's like Percy Jackson meets George Orwell's
Oh
1984.
wow, I probably love that.
Yeah. So,
Isn't
because
that
I used
Clockwork Orange? I'm sorry.
to. So basically, Percy Jackson gives you the flavor that it's going to be fast paced. There's going to be mythological creatures. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun for the whole family. Ages 10 or up or 12 or up could enjoy it. And then what? George Orwell's 1984. That's surprising. So that makes it a good pitch because you're like, well, I kind of get where you're going. Those are two interesting things to put together. So the theme that I'm playing with, or the idea that I'm wrapping in an emotion, is that free speech really matters and that censorship is evil. So in the Narnia series, there was the evil witch and the lion, the witch, and the wardrobe. My evil witch chops people's tongues and
Okay.
forces them to say what the government wants them to say by turning them into puppets. So literally complete loss of agency. Those are the evil people in magic, mystery, and the multiverse. And so that was an idea that I didn't want to preach to people because, again, if you just preach an idea, how many of the 10 commandments do people remember versus how many stories? So I thought that is an important idea that if I could communicate it to young adults and they talk about it with their parents or their teachers or they argue about it in class, that's what I want. I want them to think about it. I want to present this evil person chops people's tongues out. What do you think about that? Is that okay in some circumstances? Maybe not. What do you think? I'm not telling them what to think. Whereas a nonfiction book would tell you, here's what happened with free speech. Here's when the law changed. Here's when the First Amendment happened. And I would present the whole argument logically, but the only people who would read it would be those who probably already agree with it. So
Yeah.
hopefully that answers the question. If you have a problem that you solve, it's probably a nonfiction book. But if you have a passion that you really want to be a catalyst for shining light on and you'd like to launch an argument rather than tell people what to think, then you might want to consider fiction.
I think of two films from what you've just said. People versus Larry Flint and Private Parts are two stories that tell that story, but there's not a whole lot of them that tell about freedom of speech in a profound
Hmm.
way.
Hmm.
And those are two of my favorite stories in our history, and
Oh,
I couldn't
you're
agree with you more.
inspiring me to go watch them again.
Unfortunately, we're shooting this on September 16th, and we just had people murdered in our country because of their thoughts and their beliefs and their speech. Right?
Yeah,
There's no other way to say that, and it's very sad. And I think it's relevant to have those conversations now more than ever. Well, I guess
I
it's
think,
always been important to have those conversations,
I
but
think
now it feels very, very relevant.
Yeah, I just recorded an episode for Strategic Basics about Charlie Kirk's murder, but more really, I was shocked by his murder. I didn't know him, I didn't follow him beforehand, but I was appalled by the people who were openly celebrating somebody's murder. Like, what? Like, if you don't like
And they have
somebody's
their freedom of
opinion,
speech.
pardon me?
And they have their freedom of speech.
If you don't like somebody's opinion, you just don't listen to him.
Yeah.
You don't have to kill him.
It's a weird time that we're in at the moment, and we don't necessarily understand, are these real people
Yeah.
or are these agendas that are, because we live in a world where we can create fake people that seem to be real, and they can have any narratives that the agenda wants them to have, regardless if they're true or not. But I
Well,
digress. As
we
someone
digress.
who's built multiple businesses, how do you evaluate an opportunity today? What criteria must be in place before you commit?
Well, I have 3 questions that I think anybody can ask themselves, and I always ask myself these questions when I'm pivoting, but listeners can also do this. What am I really good at? What am I really, really good at? What have I spent 10,000 hours at? What do I still love to do? Because if you're really good at it, but you're just done, that's not a good thing to build your business on that. And then who is that worth the most to? So, what am I really good at? What do I love to do? And who is that worth the most to? So, when I got my MBA in 2015, I was like, I could do anything. I could live anywhere. What do I want to do? So, I made a list of things that I'm curious about because I think curiosity is energy. So, I made a list of 25 things that I was curious about. And then I looked at the list and I'm like, 20 of these 25 things all have to do with communication, from stand up comedy to movies to books to TED Talks to neuroscience of communication. Basically, Aurora, you are obsessed with communication and you still love it. So why don't you do something in that area? And then the answer to who is that worth the most to, in my case with the spoken author method, it's worth the most to experts who are wanting to have a book to become a lead magnet for their business so they can attract premium clients at premium prices or take their thought leadership to the next level as a speaker.
Beautiful. I love it. What's the biggest mistake you made in your author publishing journey?
Oh my
Something
gosh.
that taught you a lesson, but was painful at the time.
So many mistakes I could possibly choose from. Painful at the time. Okay. I think the biggest mistake that was the most painful was the gap in time between publishing my first and my second book. I thought my first book was in a way a kind of a jewel, like it was a little bit perfect in a sort of a way, but it was a diary of healing. Where do I go from there? And so but because it was a diary of healing, somebody whose opinion I cared about, even though he wasn't an author, he basically said, a diary of healing, that's not a book. It's not a book. I'm like, what about the diary of Anne Frank? And I allowed that one negative comment to make me shrink. And it was really hard for me to write my second book because I'm like, maybe, maybe I only have one thing to offer that would help other people. But I'm like, okay, I had to break through this. I wrote a second book, which you can tell I was struggling because it's only a book of inspiring quotes. It's called Encouraging Words. So I thought it's a little gift book to give somebody to encourage them. And then I was on fire. Then I wrote Grief Relief in 30 Minutes, which is the cognitive behavioral therapy. Then I wrote the Grief Relief Workbook. And then I wrote Marketing Fast Track, the little book that launched a new business and generated $250,000 in 90 days. And then I wrote Turn Words into Wealth. And then I'm like, what about that dream that you had about writing fantasy? And then I wrote 3 fantasy books. And that doesn't count the books that I ghostwrite.
Beautiful. I love it. It teaches such a valuable lesson because, I teach a lot of kids boxing and I work with a lot of business owners, a lot of startups along the world. And a consistent theme that I talk about with all of them is you're going to have failures or what seem to be failures to you out of the gate, right? Those are important things that you have to get through. You have to publish a book that gets 0 sales. You don't have to do that, but you're probably going to do that before you get a book that has 100,000 copies sold, or you get a bestseller, or you get an international bestseller, right? You're going to probably do some big old stinkers before you start getting good at it. And that's okay. And do it out in public if you need to, or hide it. You can do it under a fake name, especially with authorship, you can do all kinds of stuff. I think it's important for people to know that if you've sold books and made 7 figures off a book, I mean, how much did you earn on the first couple?
Yeah, almost nothing.
Almost nothing, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not uncommon. I've interviewed over 500 entrepreneurs and founders of companies, and I have met one of them that claims that he knocked it out of the park on the first try. And I tend to believe him because he was super young and he just had a really cool concept at a very, very unique time in the planet. So, that's a pretty big number of not successful on their first attempts.
And yet the other thing is the way that the books changed me, it changed my businesses. Like, I made very little from my first book, but it did launch a business that generated 7 figures. So
yeah,
it
I use
wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for the book. I wouldn't have gone on radio and TV. I wouldn't have stepped into the identity of an author if I hadn't written a book.
stepped into the identity of an author. I could talk about that sentence for decades.
Wow.
5 years from now,
I want to hear you have to say something. You can't just say that and not say something.
all of my writing is about self-identity. Everything I write about is about self-identity. And my core thesis in the world is that a human can do whatever they want to do if they identify as that thing. If you
I
want to be a
love it.
boxer and you identify as a boxer, you will be a boxer. And my decades of addiction, and just so you get an idea, I went through AA for the first time at 13 years old, court ordered. And I think it's a miserable system. And I couldn't find a program. But any system that you stand up every day and say, I'm an alcoholic, and that's your identity, then you'll be an alcoholic for the rest of your life. And I think that society puts these labels on you. And when you put a label on yourself, then you can't be anything but what you believe you are. And if you believe you're something great, then, well, you'll be great. But if you believe you're
Yeah.
something bad, you'll be bad. So almost everything I write is about self-identity.
I love that. I love encouraging people to identify as a hero and become that hero.
Absolutely. And they have it. And it doesn't matter. We live in an economy today where 5 years ago, to be an influencer, you had to have hundreds of thousands or millions of followers. Today, you can have a really great business with 1,000 followers, 1,000 key clients, or even 100. You can do a really
Yeah.
great side gig, right? So, and that's really what I want to try to show people. That's my mission in the world, to show people that you, in this world that we're living in 2025 and moving forward, how you identify as yourself is what your business is probably going to be. That's how you're going to earn money. That's how you're going to live in this world. And it doesn't matter if you want to identify as a farmer or a comedian or a boxer or a podcast host or whatever it is, you can make a living doing that. And, maybe my childhood growing up poor and homeless just drove me to this, but I think it's important.
I agree. I think that's very important. And what's cool about it is it's also empowering because you can choose to declare who you want to become. You can choose to say, I'm an author. You can choose to say, I'm a successful boxer or I'm a stand up comedian or whatever the
It's
case may
very
be.
hard to leave the mindset of victimhood into empowerment, but if you can do it, the world changes for you pretty quickly.
Very quickly.
Very quickly.
That's one of the
Aurora,
things I learned about grief is both my son and I hated to be seen as victims. Even though what had happened was tragic, we just refused to be victims.
yeah. And it's hard because you feel like you need to be sad and grieve and mourn, and you do. You have to do all of those things. But if you say, "Oh, woe was me, this happened to me," instead of, "Oh, this is something that I have to deal with and go through," it's a wildly different mindset.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen to you; it happened to them. You're just a byproduct of the
Impacted,
circumstance.
right.
Yeah,
And watch out for that victim identity. It can be sticky and you don't want it to stick to you.
yeah. And I think it's the one shift that a person. I think it's the most valuable shift that a human can make on this planet is from victimhood to empowerment.
I agree, Ken. We're on the same page.
Yeah. 5 years from now, what does success look like for you and the impact, and what is the impact that you want to leave?
5 years from now, what success looks like is my fantasy series, Magic, Mystery, and the Multiverse, is on television, like Percy Jackson TV series or A Shadow and Bone or even a Wednesday, something like that. And that I've helped, I don't know, another dozen experts become thought leaders and make a bigger difference and have a legacy building book that they're proud of that changes lives.
Beautiful. I love it. Aurora, Diary of a CEO is my favorite podcast. I watch it every week. That and Kill Tony, if you want to get into my mind, really,
I
really.
watch Kill Tony a lot with my son, and I do like Diary of a CEO, although he's gotten so doom and gloom recently. I'm like, "No, the world is coming to an end."
Yeah, it is. It is scary. So your question comes from Christian Horner. What is your biggest regret? And if you could go back, what would you do differently?
What is my biggest regret and what would I do differently? Well, maybe it's only because I shared it earlier, but I think what I would do differently is when that person who I was dating at the time told me that's not a book, I'd go, probably not the person to be with, instead of going, what? I could do better. So instead of taking that on and going, I'm pathetic loser, I would go, you're not the right person for me. And I would have
I think that's brilliant.
ended earlier.
Negativity in relationships can be profound. For
Yeah,
me, when I was going through recovery, my relationship with my daughter got pretty rocky, and we still are friends and we still get along very well. But that is a regret that I have, and the only thing I could do to make it better is be a better father for her now. So
that's right.
absolutely. And if you're out there watching and you've got a big regret in life that you want to share with the audience, feel free to hit it in the comments, and we'll be happy to have conversations with you about that. Aurora, thank you so much for your time today. Somebody wanted to work with you. How would they find you?
Well, Ken, this has been so much fun. So they could find me on my website, which is aurorawinter.com, AuroraWinter.com, or my company name is samepagepublishing.com. Or really, if they just want to take a deeper dive, maybe go read Turn Words into Wealth, which is available wherever books are sold. And that'll give you 7 different ways of making 7 figures with your book.
Absolutely. And if you've got a story to tell, get to writing. It's never been a better time.
Exactly right.
Aurora, thank you so much. I hope you have a great day. I
Thanks,
appreciate
Ken.
you.